Middle East tensions escalate. Iran, Hormuz, Syria, and a region on edge. Assalamu Alaikum, viewers. Welcome back to the channel. The Middle East is witnessing another period of intense political and military tension. Developments surrounding Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, Yemen, Syria, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the United States are creating a rapidly changing regional picture. In today's video, we will examine the major developments reported over the past few days, and, more importantly, what they could mean for the wider geopolitical situation. Important note, several of the claims circulating in the reports below come from Iranian, regional, or partisan sources and have not been independently verified. We will therefore distinguish between reported claims, official statements, and analytical interpretations, rather than presenting every battlefield claim as confirmed fact. Strait of Hormuz, the biggest flashpoint. One of the most important developments concerns the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most strategically important energy routes. Reports circulating on August 22nd claimed that Iranian naval forces confronted attempts by several small oil tankers to move through the waterway, and that missiles and drones were allegedly used against targets. Another report claimed that an American F-35A operating over the United Arab Emirates transmitted the International Emergency Code 7700 before landing at Al Dhafra Air Base. However, these specific battlefield claims require independent confirmation. What is beyond dispute is the strategic importance of Hormuz. Any prolonged disruption in the strait could affect global oil markets, shipping insurance, tanker traffic, and energy supplies across Asia and Europe. Reports attributed to CNN have also described the waterway as being effectively closed or severely restricted, with exceptions reportedly dependent on Iranian permission. If such restrictions continue, the economic consequences could become more important than the military confrontation itself. Iran's strategic position. Another major theme emerging from these developments is Iran's attempt to use its geographical position and military capabilities as leverage. Iran sits beside the Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant share of global petroleum trade normally passes. This gives Tehran an important strategic advantage, but it also creates enormous risks. A prolonged confrontation could damage Iran's economy, while simultaneously creating a global energy crisis. That is why the Strait of Hormuz has become much more than a regional military issue. It is now a potential pressure point for the entire global economy. Trump and the U.S. political dimension. Another striking statement attributed to President Donald Trump concerns the upcoming midterm elections. Trump reportedly said that if Republicans lose the elections, he could face impeachment. The significance of this statement goes beyond American domestic politics. If Washington becomes increasingly divided internally while simultaneously facing pressure in the Middle East and Europe, the administration could face difficult choices over military commitments abroad. This raises an important question. Can the United States effectively manage multiple strategic crises at the same time? That question becomes even more important when we consider developments involving Russia and Europe. Middle East and Eastern Europe. Two fronts? Some analysts argue that the Middle Eastern crisis and the Russia-Europe confrontation are becoming increasingly interconnected. The argument is straightforward. If Washington becomes heavily involved in the Middle East, its ability to devote resources and political attention to Europe could be reduced. At the same time, a major escalation involving Russia could force the United States to redirect military and diplomatic resources toward Europe. However, claims that Russia is preparing a major new offensive or that Iran and Russia are coordinating a synchronized strategy should be treated cautiously unless supported by reliable, independent evidence. The broader strategic point, nevertheless, remains important. The United States faces the challenge of managing several competing security priorities simultaneously. Syria, Israel, Turkey, and a new security equation. Syria has also become another major center of tension. Reports have emerged concerning Israeli concerns over Turkish military activity inside Syria, including alleged Turkish air defense deployments. There have also been reports from Axios and other outlets regarding contacts between Israeli and Syrian officials. According to the reports provided, discussions focused on mechanisms to prevent further attacks and avoid direct confrontation. Another claim suggests that Syria, Turkey, and Israel could establish a trilateral security mechanism. If such an arrangement actually develops, it would represent a significant change in Syria's regional security environment. Why? Because Turkey, Israel, and Syria have very different strategic interests. Any mechanism capable of preventing direct confrontation between these actors could potentially reduce the risk of a wider regional conflict. At the same time, reports of Israeli military activity near Syria, including an alleged incursion around Daraa, demonstrate that tensions remain extremely high. Southern Lebanon. Reports have also described continuing Israeli military activity in southern Lebanon, including alleged destruction of civilian homes around Yamar al-Shakif. Such developments are particularly sensitive because any escalation on the Lebanese front could quickly involve additional regional actors. The Lebanese-Israeli border, therefore, remains another potential trigger for a broader conflict. Yemen, another pressure point. Yemen remains a critical part of this geopolitical equation. A report attributed to Yemen's official news agency claimed that Yemeni forces shot down a Saudi Scan Eagle reconnaissance drone in Hajjah province. Again, this should be treated as a reported claim pending independent confirmation. But strategically, the incident highlights the continuing tension between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. If attacks and counterattacks continue, Saudi Arabia could face growing pressure on its southern border and critical infrastructure. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey. Another major development involves Saudi Arabia's emerging security relationships with Pakistan and Turkey. Reports have discussed a so-called Mecca agreement involving Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey. Some Iranian sources have claimed that Tehran was invited to participate, or that Iran is considering such an invitation. The available information should be verified before drawing firm conclusions about the agreement's exact structure. Nevertheless, the diplomatic significance is worth examining. If Saudi Arabia were genuinely interested in involving Iran in a regional security arrangement, it could indicate that Riyadh increasingly believes regional security cannot be managed through confrontation alone. It would also demonstrate how dramatically the regional balance has changed. General Asim Munir's Tehran visit. One of the most closely watched developments is the reported visit of Pakistan's Army Chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, to Tehran. Speculation has emerged over whether Pakistan could be carrying a message from Saudi Arabia, the United States, or another regional actor. At this stage, such interpretations remain speculation unless officially confirmed. Pakistan, however, occupies a unique position. Islamabad maintains relations with Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, and the United States. That gives Pakistan potential diplomatic importance at a time when regional tensions are increasing. The key question is not simply what message Pakistan may carry, but whether Islamabad can help reduce tensions without becoming directly involved in the confrontation. China and the Strait of Hormuz. China is another major player. Reports have claimed that Chinese-flagged vessels are continuing to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, using routes identified by Iranian authorities. This development is strategically important because China is one of the world's largest energy importers. Beijing, therefore, has a strong interest in keeping the Strait of Hormuz open and avoiding a prolonged military confrontation. If Chinese shipping continues to move through the waterway while other commercial traffic remains restricted, it could create new diplomatic complications. Iran's new gas discovery. Not every major development is military. Reports from Iran have highlighted the discovery of approximately 7.5 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in southern Fars province. The reported reserves could potentially provide substantial additional gas supplies over many years. If independently confirmed and successfully developed, such a discovery could strengthen Iran's energy position and provide additional economic value despite sanctions and geopolitical pressure. The reported low sulfur quality of the gas could also reduce processing and development costs. This illustrates an important point. Iran's strategic power is not based solely on missiles, drones, or geography. Its energy resources, population, industrial capacity, and regional connections also contribute to its long-term geopolitical position. Yemen's Mawlid celebrations. Amid all the military and political developments, there is another important story from Yemen. Reports show that cities under the control of the Sana'a authorities have been decorated in green ahead of celebrations marking the birth of Prophet Muhammad. Despite years of war and economic hardship, religious and cultural traditions continue to play an important role in Yemeni society. This provides a different perspective on a country that is often discussed only in terms of war and military operations. A historic political development in the United States. Another reported development concerns Aisha Wahab, described in the supplied reports as the first Afghan-American woman to reach the U.S. Congress. Her political rise is significant because it reflects the growing diversity of American political representation. However, the specific description of her election should be independently checked before being presented as a confirmed historical first. Canada and the United States. Another remarkable statement attributed to the Premier of British Columbia argued that the cost of resisting American pressure could be lower than the long-term cost of surrendering sovereignty. Whether this statement ultimately becomes part of a broader political movement remains to be seen, but it reflects a wider debate about the balance between national sovereignty, economic dependence, and relations with Washington. Iran's warning to economic targets. Another reported statement attributed to Iranian officials warned that continued economic pressure could lead Iran to target American economic interests in the region. This is perhaps one of the most serious aspects of the current situation. Economic warfare can easily evolve into physical confrontation. If commercial infrastructure, energy companies, or shipping interests become military targets, the conflict could spread far beyond the battlefield. That is precisely why regional governments and international markets are watching developments so closely. The bigger picture. So, what does all of this mean? The most important conclusion is that the Middle East is no longer experiencing isolated conflicts. Instead, several interconnected pressure points are developing simultaneously. Iran and the United States, the Strait of Hormuz and global energy markets, Israel and Lebanon, Israel, Turkey, and Syria, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, Russia and Europe, and behind all of these developments are major global powers such as the United States, China, and Russia. The danger is not necessarily that all these fronts will erupt simultaneously. The real danger is that one unexpected incident could trigger a chain reaction. A confrontation at sea could affect oil markets. An attack in Syria could involve Turkey or Israel. An escalation in Lebanon could bring additional actors into the conflict. A crisis around Iran could affect U.S. military deployments, and developments in Europe could force Washington to make difficult strategic choices. Final analysis. The coming days could therefore be extremely important. Iran appears determined to maintain maximum leverage, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz. The United States faces the challenge of balancing pressure on Tehran against the risk of a wider regional war. Saudi Arabia appears increasingly interested in regional security arrangements. Pakistan may have an opportunity to play a diplomatic role. Turkey's growing involvement in Syria could create both opportunities and new tensions, and China has a major economic interest in keeping regional energy routes functioning. At this stage, however, it would be premature to declare that a major new war is inevitable. The situation remains fluid, and many of the battlefield claims circulating on social media and partisan channels still require independent verification. One thing is clear: the strategic competition around Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and Syria is becoming increasingly important not only for the Middle East, but for the global economy and international security. If you found this analysis informative, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for the latest developments and in-depth geopolitical analysis. Until the next update, stay informed and stay safe.